I feel like they're back on the right track because I think having an admission, even just like having Kevin Feige or even in the Deadpool and Wolverine, having them wink at the camera, being like, yeah, we've struggled.
Wolverine? What's the combo there?
Deadpoolverine?
Dead PoolVerine, baby. Yep.
LoguePool?
LoguePool. Yeah, how about just the money pool? Because that's what
Money
they're going to
pool.
have
Yeah,
a bunch
actually,
of.
yeah.
It is a giant money pool for Ryan Reynolds and co.
Yes, it is.
You're the Marvel man, and we both know this.
Yeah.
You've got lots to say when it comes to Marvel, but this is Foxy Marvel, so a little different, right?
Yeah, this was a weird kind of. It was on the one hand, definitely like a Marvel, Kevin Feige, MCU, sacred timeline movie, but on the other hand, it was also a send off to the Fox universe of movies, and not just the Fox universe of movies. Yeah, the Fox universe of movies that includes X-Men and Elektra and the Fantastic Four, the original, and so it's a send off to all of them. And so it's like its mainstream connection to like the sacred timeline MCU stuff is pretty light. I thought going in,
Yeah.
I thought it would have a stronger connection to that kind of stuff. But this is certainly more of a bridge to get those characters involved in the overall story.
Yeah, at one point, Deadpool turns to the camera and says, "This is not just another movie with a silly setup to make something bigger." But at the same time, I was like, but isn't it? I mean, but
Yeah.
isn't it? By the way, last chance if you haven't seen this and you don't want to hear spoilers, just pause. Pause and go listen to anything else and come back after you've seen it. But we've all seen this movie. We're the fans. Okay, Blade. Let's talk about Blade. Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds had a huge fight on Blade Trinity, I want to say the third one. Huge onset battle, did not go well. Ryan Reynolds was trying to improv, didn't go well. The fact he brought him back is such a beautiful and merciful, marvelous moment of, you know what, bygones be bygones. You need a proper send off. And I love that that was the theme of at least the middle part of the movie, a real proper send off. But do you think that Logan needed a second proper send off?
You know what? That the movie opened with like the kind of the voiceover, the Deadpool / Ryan Reynolds voiceover of like, when we sat down to write this, the one thing was don't tarnish the memory of Logan.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do the exact opposite. And so they like in that Marvel way of like winking at the camera, which with Deadpool they really can wink at the camera.
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing. Logan, phenomenal movie, right? Just so good. A great way to end our attachment to Wolverine, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. But I certainly in the multiverse era of movies, not just in Marvel, but in general, because Everything Everywhere All at Once was a multiverse movie. And I think what's cool about multiverse movies is that it's not that just that, like, even though Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was like, oh, we're going to go to a world where stoplights are reversed. And so green means stop and red means go. Like, that's ridiculous. That's just, it's stupid. But to be able to see all of the variants of yourself and be like, this is the worst one. I think that's really good storytelling because that's what Everything Everywhere All at Once did was it was like, oh, this is actually the worst version of this character in the entire multiverse. And we're going to make the entire story about her. And I'm just like, that's a really fun idea. And so to be able to basically do that with Wolverine and say, this is not the Wolverine. In fact, we're going to dig up his body and kill a bunch of people with his adamantium bones, which was very funny. But the Wolverine that we're going to have on screen is actually the worst Wolverine of them all. I think that's a very interesting way to do the plot.
It's the big criticism of everyone who does not believe in reincarnation or the rest. The idea that like, oh, I used to be a king or a prince or a queen or an astronaut. It's like, no, you were probably a peasant shoveling shit. Like the proper critical multiverse theory would be that, yeah, there are some shitty ones out there. And it was nice to have a shitty Deadpool, but not the shittiest, be with the shittiest Wolverine, the only one who would take up a stupid quest. I agree. It was a fun conceit. I was thinking it was going to be straight from X-Men Wolverine. Like after X3, here we go, or The Last Stand, or
Mm.
whatever else. So I'm glad they went with this one because I was like, oh, that's fun. He's got the suit, he's angry, he's got a gritty backstory, doesn't know who Deadpool is. Okay, that's a fun way to go about this one.
Yeah. And, that way we got the fun montage of Deadpool trying to find the right
Oh,
Logan to
it
bring
was
into his
great.
universe, which was really fun. Let Hugh Jackman ham it up in these different variants. And we even got to see Henry Cavill as a fan cast of Logan, which I think when they did the close up on the muscles, I was like, those don't look like Hugh Jackman muscles.
Uh-uh. And I loved his little quip of, "Hey, those guys down the street don't treat you right. Come on over here. We'll do a good boy." It was nice. And to me, I don't know how you felt about Doctor Strange too. I didn't love the John Krasinski casting for that reason of like, here you go, fans. You've been wanting it. Here it is. Now it's done. This was at least so tongue in cheek. It was funnier. I'm not so serious about it all. I
Yeah.
did like that.
Yeah. I feel like the plot was okay.
Yeah.
Like, I love the inclusion of Wolverine, and I love kind of the character, the groundedness of his character. The kind of the conceit of the plot, though, like, I love the idea of anchor beings. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I think that is so cool that Logan and Deadpool shared a universe. I thought that was like, okay, so they're in the same universe. But then now that I'm talking about it, this is some fridge logic where I don't know at what point in the timeline Logan happened, but he dies. And then if he's
Yeah.
the anchor being, that means that the universe ends up dying itself. But that happened in the kind of the future and not the past where Deadpool actively is living in relation. Anyways, but the conceit of like Deadpool used Cable's time device to jump through timelines, and then he jumped into the 616 universe's timeline to try and join the Avengers. And then
Mhm.
because he didn't get to join the Avengers, he's now sad and his girlfriend dumped him. I'm just like, what? That's a lot of stuff to happen off screen.
Yeah. A lot of stuff to happen off screen, a lot of assumptions, a lot of it makes sense if you just don't ask any questions. Yeah, I didn't love that part. I didn't love Matthew McFadden being his character from Succession, just with his regular British accent. I was like, oh, here we are again. And at least for me, who did not read the comics, I watched the TV shows growing up enough or whatever. I played some of the games. I had no idea who Cassandra Nova was. I'm not saying it was like a deep cut because it's Deadpool, they're always getting secondary characters, but it was weird to me to hinge on this unkillable god figure sticking fingers in people's noses. Nothing to stop her. Okay, the only thing that can stop her is all of us that are about to be forever wiped away from the Disney slate. Yeah, I don't know. It still was fun and I love the movie, but I'm with you on some points. I'm like, it's better you just don't think about some of these little giant plot holes.
Yeah. So I do know Cassandra Nova, right? She's
Yeah.
Professor X's twin in the womb who was evil and died in the womb or whatever the hell. And because Charles Xavier is just this intense, she is his equal in those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I wasn't really sure with her characterization. She wasn't just like a straight villain because there was a moment there where you're like, oh, I think she's going to be able to, our heroes are going to be able to work with her to
Yeah.
figure something out. And I wasn't sure if the guy from the TVA was the actual villain, talking about a power hungry, grabby kind of guy. But yeah, leaving aside the fridge logic, really fun ride. Great ride. But some of the fridge logic is like, okay, you have Blade, X-23, Elektra, and Gambit.
Yeah.
And then they just like, oh, because Deadpool and Wolverine just like told them, hey, what if we tried to storm the castle? They're like, but like, we would all die doing that. And they're like, no, but let's go do it. And then they go do it and like they just kill everyone. I'm like, why did that take you so long?
Yeah.
Come on. What are you doing? Like, give me a reason for why you didn't actually do that other than it just wasn't convenient to the plot yet.
Yeah, there wasn't like an amazing first lieutenant bad guy because it was Pyro, but not really, right?
Yeah.
There would have it would have helped to have some other bad guy, some reason they couldn't have gone in there and just tried to kill everybody. Also, Sabretooth was dead in a second. Human Torch was just vaporized, which was disgusting, but also funny. And of
I
course,
thought
the
that was
post-credit
hilarious.
scene was great. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, Chris Evans. Oh, not Captain America. That's funny.
Yeah. No, that I thought that cameo was really that was probably one of the best received cameos in my theater.
Yeah.
Because Deadpool is talking to this cloaked figure and he's like, "Oh, you got to be ready. We're going to swear a little bit more than you're used to, blah, blah, blah," as if he was Captain America. He jumps down. The reveal is he's Chris Evans. And of course, all of us in the audience are familiar with Chris Evans being Captain America. So we're like, oh my gosh. But then he's actually Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four, which was Chris Evans' original casting, which honestly, so good because I'm like, oh, so if they're doing this multiverse stuff, some of these characters have played the same different characters, or some of these actors have played different characters. How are they going to deal with that? And they just did.
Yeah.
They just let it be.
We're going to bookmark this for the end of the episode, but also, yes. Love the movie. The fight scenes were great, but also like maybe a little excessive at some points where I was like, oh, we're just still fighting. Okay, we are still freaking fighting. I could.
That's what you get with two bloodthirsty, sharp knife hand guys who also regenerate and just can't die in a normal way.
Like, honestly, watching it, I was like, okay, if Batman Superman had been, I don't know, directed by somebody else and had a little more of that fighting, it would have been more of a throwdown and enjoyable. So I feel like there's maybe like some happy medium that could have gone elsewhere, but also knowing comics or otherwise, Deadpool, Wolverine, it had to go that way. Yeah, two unkillable guys just pissed off. The Honda Odyssey fight was fantastic. Just stabbing.
Just covered in blood at the end. And here's what I thought they did a really good job on. Making Wolverine a little bit more animalistic than he has been in other iterations. Because that first time that they start, that first fight scene at the wastelands of the Void, he starts running at Deadpool on all fours.
Oh, that was great. Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this guy's an animal. And I'm like, oh, that's right. He's the Wolverine. He's an animal.
I had a lot of people whispering in the movie when they first showed all the different Wolverines. And he's a little short one. They're like, why is he so short? I'm like, that is the comic accurate one, right? It's not 6 foot something Australian Hugh Jackman. It's little tiny Tom Cruise wannabe.
Yeah, no, he's exactly right. Yeah.
And I am glad. I know it's more than just fan service. It's showing a dedication to the source material, but also just saying we don't have to be anything else. We should just be what the Wolverine is. And I do like that part. Gambit and his horrendous French accent. It was fun. And I was like, you know, what again, a move of mercy from Reynolds and co. to be like, this got shit canned as soon as Disney bought the Fox properties. They were like, that's never happening. Goodbye, Channing. It's nice that he got his time on screen. And you're like,
yeah,
okay,
he did.
That's fun.
I remember hearing those rumors for at least like a decade of like, oh, Channing Tatum's going to be Gambit in a Gambit solo film or whatever. And like, it just never materialized.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way about Blade, and I'm so glad they dropped a joke in the movie about like, yeah, I'm the only on-screen Blade there'll ever be. It's like, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Oh, it was good.
Okay. Loved Wolverine's comic accurate costume. And I love the story reasons behind it, where he was like, Scott and the X-Men were always trying to get me to wear a costume, but I would never do it because I never wanted to look like I belonged with them. But then they all died, and now I have to wear it to like remind myself of what I should be and could be. But the cowl, the face mask, awful.
You didn't love it.
No, dude, it was so bad CG. Like, it was so clearly a CGI cowl that was put on like Hugh Jackman's face. There was like almost maybe only 2 times that I looked at it where I was like, okay, this looks okay. Almost every other time I'm like, this could only be improved by taking it off.
It should have been practical the whole time. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the moment you're talking about, at least if I remember right, is when he first pulls it over, and the pulling is so wrong. Every little bit of it is so bad. It's pretty cringe. It is pretty cringe. When he has it on at some point, I think it had to have been practical here or there, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just like, maybe this is one of those costumes that only works in a 2-dimensional animated format. But once you make it live action, it just like, it just didn't look very good. And so if I were to do this again, if I were to give notes to Kevin Feige, I would say, Kevin, the mask is not working. Just scrap it. You got 95% of the costume. Scrap the mask. Because the shirtless Logan at the end, which was really funny, with that Madonna song that came on when they're holding hands, holding the matter antimatter together, like fantastic. He's just ripped as hell, and Deadpool knows it. And he looks. That's the whole thing. If he didn't have the mask on, I would have enjoyed that 10 times more.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard with the CG stuff, and you just wonder why they don't just do more practical. I don't know. Before we move on to general Marvel questions, why did all the Deadpools want to kill this Deadpool? Is there anything like this in the comics or otherwise, other than just having a giant fight scene where just like, all right, we're just slicing up other Deadpools?
That's a good question, and I don't have a good answer for that because
Okay.
while I loved the inclusion of Nice Pool with
Yeah.
the Ryan Reynolds with the good face, the beautiful hair, the earring, and he's smiling, like I thought that was so funny because he's just the opposite of what our Deadpool is. And he makes a reference about the Deadpool Corps, but doesn't like say, at least as far as I remember, doesn't really say whether they're for Cassandra Nova or whether they're just out there marauding through the wastelands. And so I didn't really.
Same here. I was like, this is just Ryan wanting to have fun, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with, and we're not gonna over criticize or whatever else. But it was a moment where I was scratching my head. I was like, why are they here? What is the Wrexham Deadpool showing up here for? Fun because they own the property. I was just waiting for the aviation gin Deadpool to show up.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
The guy with the big crest on him, like the little lion thing going on.
Yeah.
And then later, Ryan was like, by the way, I also had a Canadian pool, black suit with a Canada flag. Again, fun, but I was just a little lost. I was like, why? Where does this connect?
Yeah. When they first showed up, I was like, oh, so they're here to help.
Yeah.
And then it was like, no, they're here to fight you. And then the fight scene was fun, though. It was a fun fight scene.
It was fun. Yeah.
Just watch Deadpool and Wolverine just tear their way through all these Deadpools.
The bus was fun. I liked the bus.
The bus, yeah, it was fun. And again, like I love the idea of the variants, and the different variants are able to like say different things about the character, but they don't really like do too much with the variants as much as they were just cannon fodder for sharp knives and blades.
Yeah, it got me wondering. I'm like, is this going to be at some point part of the Doomsday or timeline or Secret Wars? We're going to have other. I don't know if that really answered any questions for me. I'm like, oh, I don't.
It could be. Did you? So you didn't read the comics?
No. Huh?
So in the Secret Wars comic that they're adapting all this from, essentially, all of the multiverse collapses down into kind of a battle world that is an amalgamation of all these different worlds and universes. Yeah. And that's what the Void is. It's an amalgamation. It's just a whatever's left over kind of world. And in the battle world in the comics, there was the Thor Corps. There was all of the Thors were together in a force. They were like the cops of the battle world. And so to have something like the Deadpool Corps is not actually that far off from the comics, where you get all the variants of this type of character together, and they're either working for someone or they have their own motives or whatever. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Deadpool Corps again. I also have an idea where they're going because I've read the comics between the Doomsday and the Secret Wars.
Yeah.
But how they're going to get there, I have no clue, dude.
Is that a spoiler? Can we just say what your idea is?
We both saw the casting news from the Comic-Con, right?
Yes, we did. Robert Downey Jr. back as Doomsday?
Back as Dr. Doom.
Dr. Doom. How do you feel about it?
Cautiously optimistic.
Okay. Let's say.
Like, yeah, because I think what's so funny is you've got in Endgame, Thanos is like, you couldn't live with your own failure. And where did that bring you? Back to me. And it's like, okay, so Disney couldn't get it done without the Russos or Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Where did that bring them? Back to them. And it'll cost them, like the Russos, I think it was $80 million to get them on board. And Robert Downey Jr. was more than that. Yeah. So that's a staggering amount of money to give someone to bring them on board. But the caution is the same kind of caution where with Deadpool and Wolverine, like Logan had a great send off.
Yeah.
Don't tarnish the memory of Logan. And I think they did a good job of not super tarnishing the memory of Logan, but it's like Iron Man had a great send off.
Yeah.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Strictly from a budget and casting question, would you rather have Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, or would you rather have a cheaper Cillian Murphy? Would you rather have, I don't know, any number of good actors who are going to be way cheaper than this, who are still fantastic and give their own shake on the character, and then have that extra money for bringing back other people who played these characters in the past or bringing in new characters? Are we shortening the cast list of Secret Wars and Doomsday by having Robert Downey Jr. in there? We have to be. There's no way they're inflating the budget by double. Like, there's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's some possibility, like some multiverse possibilities, right? Like, I think it's possible that what we get as Doctor Doom in these movies is actually a Tony Stark variant.
I asked my friend about that, and he was like, "No, there's no way."
No,
There is some way, right?
I think it's really possible. Like, because certainly in the comics, Doctor Doom was Iron Man for a time
Okay.
because Tony Stark died for whatever reason, and Doctor Doom got his hands on some Iron Man armor and was doing the whole technology and magic thing.
Yeah.
And like, I'm pretty sure the reverse has happened where Iron Man was Doctor Doom at one point. And like, it's so malleable and plastic in the comics that I would not be surprised at all if this was an evil version of Tony Stark who wanted to put a suit of armor around the world so bad that he became the villain. And he mastered technology, he mastered magic, because that's what Doctor Doom is, both technology and magic.
Yeah.
And it's like what you get if you smash Doctor Strange and Iron Man together. You get an overconfident, cocky badass who also is really powerful, but also thinks he's got a savior complex and thinks he's the only one that can save the world. And that's who you get with Doctor Doom. And so I think that it's possible that this is going to be a Tony Stark variant, or in the case, I think B would be Robert Downey Jr. is going to play an initial version of Doctor Doom that later gets destroyed by the real Doctor Doom.
Interesting. Like a Legion of Doom?
Yeah. Just like how in Deadpool and Wolverine, you had Chris Evans playing Johnny Storm. You just have the same actor in two different roles. And the in-universe problem is that Tony Stark was the hero of the sacred timeline who died to save everything. What do you do when the villain shows up wearing the face of your hero? And there's no way that they can't address that and have that be in a multiversal context. Like, that's a real thing. That's a possibility. And so how do you have Peter Parker, who like in Far From Home was haunted, like everywhere I go, I see his face because you've got Iron Man everywhere. And then it's like, oh, not only everywhere you go in your own universe, but everywhere you go in the multiverse, you're going to see his face. And what is it like to be haunted by the face of your hero, who actually is now the biggest villain?
Yeah, that does make a little extra complexity, which will be fun. For those unacquainted, I did some digging on Doom when it was first announced he might be the one to replace Kang, because I just couldn't understand. I was like, I saw the old Fantastic Four movies. He was like movie one's villain. Like, he can't be that bad. How is he the Avengers level threat? Is he more powerful than Thanos? Is he Galactus level? Where does he fit in with the villains?
You asking me?
Yep.
He's different than Thanos and Galactus and Thanos, kind of cosmic level beings, where their power is that they're just like incredibly powerful.
Okay.
Like that was the best. One of the best opening scenes you could have done for Thanos was have him kick the Hulk's ass. That's just fantastic because it's like, oh, the Hulk just doesn't lose a fight. And so when we see the Hulk just get his ass whooped by Thanos, we're like, oh, actually Thanos is bad news. Doctor Doom is, like I said, he's kind of the master of technology and magic.
Yeah.
But he's more of a Bond villain where he's incredibly intelligent. And he's the ruler of a country, Latveria, which is a fictional country in the comics. And so he's both got this geopolitical power in the same way that like the Black Panther does.
Yeah.
But he's also the master of technology and magic and will just do whatever it takes to win the day for Doom. But he's also a megalomaniacal maniac or whatever. And so he's got that mad scientist streak in him. But I think part of the problem is that in the comics, he's really well done. On screen, he has not been well done at all. And so most audiences don't really know what to expect with Doctor Doom. But if you've read the comics, in Secret Wars, like, I'm not going to spoil it, but like he is really important in Secret Wars. And he's not just like this ham-fisted villain. He's complex. He gets backed into a corner because he's trying to ultimately save some things, but passion and attachment and love for the things he's trying to save ultimately makes him into a villain, which is it's a tragedy sense.
Yeah, that's a good villain backstory, a good way to build a villain that's not just so black and white. And it's black, white, and green because we know he's making more money than the Russos, and they say significantly more. Marvel was like, we don't want to disclose, but his paycheck is significantly more than the Russos. Is and was the Avengers just Kevin Feige's long game to get to the X-Men and Fantastic Four?
I don't know. I feel like maybe initially that could have been what it was because Fox had the rights to all of Disney's or all of Marvel's like big heroes.
Yeah.
And initially when Marvel was making an Iron Man movie, people were joking because Iron Man was a B-list hero. He was not an X-Man, he wasn't Spider-Man, these super well-known guys. And so Marvel had to do what they could with the characters that they had access to, and they had access to the Avengers. And granted, in the comics, the Avengers it's a bit of a revolving door cast. Yeah. And so it depends on who's writing is going to be who's on the team. But they did such a freaking good job with the Avengers. This is, I think, what it would be such a big bummer. My anxiety is that you've got this thing like with like the Benioff and Weiss who did the Game of Thrones, is that they made this fantastic series and then tripped at the finish line because they were doing such a good job with it that they started getting these deals for like Star Wars and these big, huge things. And they're like, oh my gosh, we want to go do Star Wars so bad. We're going to wrap up Game of Thrones early.
Yeah.
And then they fucked it up so bad that they got Star Wars taken away from them. And that's my fear is that like, if Feige really just wanted the X-Men and the Fantastic Four so bad, did a great job getting there, tripped on the finish line when they like got close to being able to access them. Like, I think the multiverse saga with Kang was going to be like a bridge, like a narrative bridge to get them to where they could start really using the X-Men and the mutants. But I'm not sure they did not pay as clearly, evidentially, they did not give it as much time and care and attention as they did with the Infinity Saga with the Avengers.
Yeah, and I hate to be one of those people who are like, oh, it's been terrible since Endgame, but I don't think it's been great. It definitely has not lived up to not just like the build-up, but it just feels like a lot of Thor 2s, like a lot of misses. Whoops, not in a row. A lot of misses. It was one of those things where just looking at Feige's filmography and knowing his history of starting as a production manager and then later producer, co-producer on original Spider-Man with Raimi, then the X-Men, then Daredevil, Hulk, Punisher, Elektra, Fantastic Four, Incredible Hulk, of course, Iron Man and everything that becomes the MCU. It's almost like I was like, oh man, is he biding his time with the Avengers being like the B-level group until he can finally just have his way with the X-Men and do what he wanted to do and not all the other colored characters who we no longer allowed to work on X-Men movies, Bryan Singer included. It was just one of those moments where I was like, I wonder if that's where he's going with this, but
yeah, it could be. But it's not to say that like Shang-Chi was so good.
Oh, it was great. Yeah.
And it's honestly a tragedy they haven't had him in anything else since.
Zero. Yeah.
I know that the writer's strike certainly like threw a curveball into the production of a lot of movies, but Shang-Chi was so good. And he was such a fun character. And that movie was actually it was a solid Marvel movie. It was a great origin story. It had heart. It had like great action scenes and great setup. And like, it hasn't been touched. And it's been like, what, 4 years?
Yeah, I think it came out 2021. So it's been 3 years at least. But yeah, no mention of it. And I'm not even going to be one of those people who are like, why have the Eternals if we never mention the big monsters again? Because I know that they're now mentioning, hey, we're going to use some of the Eternals plot lines or an Eternal to bring adamantium to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Cool. Oh, I'm not going to lie to you. I love the Eternals.
It was a movie misunderstood.
It was a misunderstood movie. Yeah, maybe rushed, but like that movie, like I don't understand why people. I mean, I get why people didn't like it because it was pretty different from what Marvel had done before.
Yeah.
But it was so good. Like it was an Adam and Eve story. It was like genuinely, it was cosmic and like deep, and like there was a lot of pathos to it, and
Yeah.
I loved it. And so kind of getting the news that we're not going to get an Eternals 2, I'm just like, oh no, this is why we can't have nice things.
It is. It's one of those things where I just wish we would take more big swings and just take one on the chin and make a second one anyway. Of like, you know what? Did it make the most movie of all of our movies? No. Were people mad who we're not going to name them? Were there people who were mad that thought Brian Tyree Henry shouldn't have been gay or this or that? Or, okay, forget them. Just make it anyway, right? Like, I didn't love She-Hulk. I understand it was great for the comics, and I know our friend Cole absolutely loved it. I thought it was fun. I still watched it. I'm like, okay, cool. I watched the show. For the haters out there, forget them. Just make the next season. Just do it anyway, which I know they are. So it is
They
frustrating that they
are?
haven't. Yeah, they're making a
Oh,
second
good.
season of She-Hulk.
Yes.
So it's one of those moments of like, I didn't love Wakanda Forever. I know a lot of people did. I thought there were some weird choices there, and they butchered some plot points, and it was muddled at moments. But you still have the characters, like include them, move on, do something with it. It feels like
Yeah.
for being such a connected universe, there's moments where nothing's connected in some properties or shows, and other times it's so many connections. I'm like, what's happening here? Deadpool fit right in the middle. It was great of like, here's his story,
Yeah.
here's Wolverine's. But it does make me wonder, yeah, what's Feige and Co. doing to make sure the next slate of movies and the next phase or whatever else you want to call it goes smoothly and doesn't feel so disjointed?
I feel like they're back on the right track because I think having an admission, even just like having Kevin Feige or even in the Deadpool and Wolverine, having them wink at the camera, being like, yeah, we've struggled.
You're
I
coming in
think
at a low point.
you don't say that. You don't say that stuff out loud unless you know that where you're going is better.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Russos don't miss, right? Like I don't think
When it
that
comes
they're
to
going to come in here.
Marvel, they don't
When it comes to
miss.
Marvel, they don't miss.
Yeah.
And I really think that you wouldn't have brought them on. I don't think just, okay, this is me being hopeful. I don't think it was just a paycheck that got them on. I think
Yeah.
you wouldn't have been able to capture their attention unless you had a story reason to bring them on, to be like, hey, look, this is where we're trying to go, and we need you guys to help us get there. And we think you guys are the right guys to get us there. And then it was so interesting and juicy that brings them on.
Yeah, they biffed most movies and things they did outside of Marvel for one reason or another. But yeah, you can't argue with the fact that, like, oh, it worked with them. Let's bring them back and make it work again. It is a nice thought. And of course, they're doing the same thing with Robert Downey Jr. It does make my heart hurt a little bit for new directors, other people who, like the Russos, were coming off of Community and Arrested Development, and they were like, hey, we want to make something big. I don't think that we've really had that with many of the directors. I can't think of a director of the last 10 Marvel movies that has a vision they're going to carry out, it's going to work. We don't have that as much. So it does make me wonder about the permanence of everything. I mean, Deadpool in the movie makes a joke about Wolverine. Welcome to Disney. They're going to have you work until you're 90. And it was funny, but also I hope that's not the case. At some point, we will get a new Wolverine, right?
Yeah, I think right now they're probably just in a stabilization period where they
Yeah.
just need to stabilize the boat before they can start taking big swings again. And I think I think in a way, bringing back Robert Downey Jr. is a swing.
True. Yeah.
Like
It
it's a
definitely the
creative
chatter.
swing.
The chatter's everywhere. Like, why is this going to work? How are they going to see them? How
Yeah,
does it work with the characters? We're talking
I think
about it right now.
it's a huge risk,
Yeah.
not just in terms of a story risk, but also like a legacy risk because Robert Downey Jr. did such a good job with Tony Stark over the decade or 15 years or whatever, how long ever he's playing that character. You come back and you flub it, you've just tarnished your work on that.
Yeah.
And so that's a gigantic risk for them to be taking. And it's a risk that is weird to us because I think kind of the multiverse shenanigans opens up a lot of different creative potentials that we're just not used to as an audience. But I don't know, dude.
From the sports world, you don't want to be MJ back on the Wizards, and you don't want to be you don't want to be Tom Brady in his final year as a Buccaneer, and you don't want to be Favre coming back for his third unretirement. But I do love a good switch up. I love a change of scenery. Let's make sure it works. And the Russos and Robert Downey, let's hope it does.
Yeah. Praise to Marvel. Praise to Doctor Doom.